Good morning or good tomorrow, wherever you might be. I've been playing for the last few days with reinstalling Windows on the basis of wanting to make video games, computer games, arguably, working better. Primarily Hogwarts Legacy. In the last month, in the last few weeks, the performance of the game has really dropped off. Like many, I guess I was starting to believe it was a hotfix that came to the game that uses a little bit less VRAM on the cards. And that is probably a cause, and it's leading to a lot of symptoms, but I don't think it's the only cause. You know, I say this after 3 days of reinstalling Windows and looking at my Hogwarts performance. And actually on a clean install of Windows it was worse. So bad. And then a completely clean install of Windows the next day and the game ran perfectly. And so the difference arguably is in how I stripped out components in Windows to stop getting in the way of Hogwarts data access. Now, some qualifiers there. I noticed on that first install of Hogwarts that if I left, I had constant microstutter, but I had microstutter when just panning the camera. Something I'd never seen before. I only ever had, since the update in August, I started to get microstutter in the game that I'd not had, and it was only on area transitions. You could watch the VRAM load up and clear out, and then load up again, and then while that was happening, all in a brief second, you could actually see microstutter happening with huge amounts of data coming into the GPU or the graphic card's VRAM. So the patch to Hogwarts, what's called a hotfix that happened in the last month, did actively knock down the amount of VRAM that cards would use. And so now we're seeing that the streaming systems, that is your page file, being used as an intermediary step to get the data from your hard drive to your system RAM and to your VRAM. And it might be the developers lean on the page file because it just makes the lowest common denominator equal. That is, they can ensure a baseline level of performance on PC platform, and it saves them having to troubleshoot people on lowly little laptops or something. People who technically have the right amount of RAM and the right amount of VRAM, but their systems aren't quick enough to load them the right way and whatnot. So the game is built on a fallback that'll just ensure it to work. But that fallback is now being taxed quite heavily. And I say this as someone that has been running the game on a fairly old solid-state drive, or a budget solid-state drive, I should say. And that budget solid-state drive never had an issue with the game. But after the patch last month, I noticed I was seeing low-resolution textures when I was travelling between the local village and the castle. And I'd never seen them before. And the more I looked into it, at first I thought it was an update to the game that caused these issues, but I think it caused an issue to fall back on the streaming subsystems. But I think it's Windows updates that might have come about last month that's actually broken those streaming subsystems. So after a couple of installs of Windows and after really looking at what was going on, I got to the point where I was like, look, I've got some ideas. Anyway, look, let's move on. Let's fire up some Hogwarts and have a look at the current build and how it's running. Why I've got Black Myth Wukong up here on the screen, it's more for the benchmark results. You'll actually notice here at the beginning of the run, it starts off less than 60, and then it has this huge drop. That's actually what equals that minimum for frame. But if you look at, there's a couple of little spikes along the way where it's trying to move in lots of data, and on this run, the game is coming from a hard drive. Right? So now what I do is I then let's go to this one. And this is the same run, no change to the settings, but just coming from a faster drive. And as you can see, it comes in higher than 60, and those little drop moments aren't really in there. Now ignore my settings, I couldn't even vouch if it was playable. I'm using frame generation to not even really, maybe average 60. That may or may not work depending how the frame generation works. Fluid motion frames 2 will drop the frame if say you're doing a fast moving pan and you've got your motion blur on and it's not frames that can generate that are good frame generation frames. There's too much change data from the last frame for it to make a good prediction. Fluid motion frames 2 and the latest builds can drop those frames in order to keep the pacing up, keep accurate data and useful data happening. If that was the case, a minimum of 46 frames, if that's made up of mostly raw frame data and not frame double data, this could be a very playable build. But because it's only a benchmark, I can't really tell, right? If you're using frame generation, some games it works really well on. I found The Witcher was really good, Hogwarts was really good, Ghostwire Tokyo was really good. But then other games, maybe not so much. Now, please bear with me, I'm using a Switch controller, and I went into my Steam settings this morning and I reversed the buttons around the way it should be, but I'm now going against 12 hours of brain training where I've been using it the other way around. Look, I'll just quit out of this. Let's look at getting some Hogwarts action fired up. Now, I'm not using my typical beta drivers or some such, I must admit. At this point, I can't do some of my tricks that I would normally do for better frame rate. But it is about testing, right? So, for me, the last couple of days has shown me a real lot regarding PCs. And I say this as someone that used Windows before it became an operating system, and it was a graphical user interface. And as it made the transition, it was always just trying to play catch up. It's never been very good at what it's doing. But Microsoft, for quite a few years now, has been trying to deprecate the PC platform. It wants to move gamers onto an Xbox console where it can make profit. And the problem with hurting the PC ecosystem, or hurting the stability of a productivity platform, I mean, that should be illegal for starters, but what they do is they double down on hurting your resources. So at every possible step when setting up Windows, 3 times I did full clean installs of Windows in the last couple of days, and every opportunity I saw for Microsoft to glitch and hurt the gamer, it did them all. Now, within 6 months of Windows 10 coming out, it's like, it's a Microsoft product, expect that. A couple of years later, when they haven't updated the primary install, the build image of Windows now for 2 years, the fact that a first run update will break a gamer's machine from being able to run their games smoothly or well is very telling. And the fact that Windows kept reverting all the changes I would make across the system to put in settings that would make the game run a lot worse. I'll give you an example, one that I noticed that was quite impacting. And I actually went to I loaded some graphics on my desktop so I could show some slides showing some benchmark data, showing my drive speeds and my RAM speeds and my CPU speeds. And with no change in my clocks at all, simply changing Windows power plan, something I'd already customized, and Microsoft went in and changed after I'd changed it, and they changed it back to their settings, and then their settings ran. Well, I knew my system wasn't running right, hence why I was running benchmarks. I was looking at numbers that should have been absolutely lock-on familiar, and they weren't coming up the way they should. So when I went to troubleshoot it, in the power plan settings, and it was like, you can't just click a button. No, you're always going to fight Windows for the advanced menu that it'll no longer give you access to. And any time that menu is buried deep, you know there's a performance tweak in there which is going to make your machine run better, right? You just know it. It's just something that it's a consistent theme. You can see that they're trying to purposely break stuff, and then they're trying to hide the settings, the ways to fix up the things that they've broken. Anyway, I'm sounding like a cynic, paranoid, but I am. It's 30 years of being a pro tech. I started my first PC business in the early 90s. I've supported Microsoft products. The rule of thumb is that whenever there's a competitor to them, any alternative will always be better than the Microsoft product. But anyway, rant and rave aside. Power plan. So minimum processor state being set to 5%. Something that Windows changed from my setting of 100% down to 5%. And even using Windows advanced graphics settings where you can give programs high priority performance mode or power saving mode, there was nothing I could do at a Windows level to say, be aware of this benchmark suite or be aware of Hogwarts and run them in performance mode, right? I'd done that using Windows methods to do that, and it still would not make my power plan run the way it should. And just changing a couple of settings in the background of Windows, and admittedly changing them once a day because Windows kept changing them back on me, my drive speeds went up by a factor of 6. My RAM speeds went up by a factor of 3. And by up, I mean latencies dropped, everything improved. My CPU speeds went up by a factor of, about 30%. Like, 3 aspects were vastly improved. So, that ad there is the reason why we've all had our games gimped. I'm not holding back anymore. I've been polite. I've spent a lot of time trying to contact Warner. Warner are closing down tickets on the topic, right? Basically, new Quidditch games coming out. They've made the old game go end of life. And they've succeeded. They've got it. Now, there's a texture under my feet that still hasn't loaded in. This is a bit concerning. Right, we can see just... Oh, no, it just came in there. Very low quality texture. Now, this is a bit of a dark area, so let me just get out of here. But what we're looking at is bits of jank. So I'll just fly up the hill here. Usually this area here leads to a brief microstutter. And of late, it's actually been able to lock up hardcore in ways that it just didn't make sense. Even with a drive that could move gigabytes a second inside the machine, for 6 or 7 seconds there, it just wasn't able to get on top of the data that was needing to be moved. And this is what's led me to believe it's not just Hogwarts at the moment that people might be fighting. It definitely is Windows. There's definitely a lot of settings in the background. I think it's the way Microsoft is treating people's page file or virtual RAM use. It's putting a lot of overhead on that. Little things like compressing the data before it writes it. And that's just more CPU hit. Now, all that stuff is fine when you're at a desktop level, but when you're in a game and your CPU's already a bit burdened, especially we're all using budget solid-state drives that rely on the CPU a little bit to move their data, and then you've got Windows doubling down when you're trying to do huge amounts of data movement, going, oh yeah, we need to waste a lot of CPU on doing redundant data processing. Like, there's just too many bottlenecks, and it was bogging the game down to the point where I've got footage from about 2 weeks ago where I moved the game onto an external, to a hard drive, and the game just ran so much better. And like, there was no microstutter. I've got it on video where I literally, in one video, run it on like an internal hard drive because it's the best way to run it. And then on that video, I swapped to an external SSD, a budget one, and it's better again. Now, obviously, it's better there because a solid-state drive, even over USB, doesn't have some of the latencies that a hard drive has in terms of seeking to get data. And you can say, oh, but these examples are all specific to my machine that might be a bit more CPU limited than a more modern machine or something. Yeah. Look, the use case for me isn't the same as the use case for someone else. I don't deny this. But the point is this has all just been investigative. Me as a techie, just trying to get on top of, well, what are the game's woes at the moment? And sadly, the communication with Warner showing me that they don't want to know about it. Right? They're closing down tickets inside of a week, saying, oh, nobody else is interested in this. It's like, dude, you got tickets open for 6 months still, like from like small other things. Like, why would you close down a ticket trying to actively redress a situation that's happening right now? And usually companies do this when they know, and they don't want other people to be able to... It comes down to causes and symptoms. If we redress the cause, all the symptoms go away. If we don't redress the cause for the next 6 weeks, then 1,000 different symptoms turn up. And then the company can come in and they can heavily-handedly break the game in so many different ways, all on the basis of trying to restore performance issues that everyone's now complaining about. And an example happened with Forza Horizon 3 did exactly this. They ran the game essentially on one core. It was multi-core, but they were using a nasty little trick in DirectX 12 where you save all the files as all the texture files as one large texture rather than a whole bunch of small files, and then they would encrypt that texture file. And they basically made the textures on PC 1 gigabyte larger than any PC video card would ever be. And then because it was encrypted, your machine was constantly decrypting in order to get video RAM that it couldn't hold into space. It just, anyway, Microsoft, they own Forza, right? They wanted to sell console games and consoles. They don't want the PC platform to exist. And there's a lot of tricks they can do to hurt these things. And so Forza existed for 6 months in a very, very poor way. But when a mod finally turned up in the forums, the official forums, and finally we had some sort of commentary from from Microsoft as a parent company, they just started outright lying. They just came in and started saying, oh yeah, don't anybody... The 10-minute load time that's now happening on AMD cards at the start of the game, yeah, nobody needs to contact AMD on that. We already have. And it's like, well, we're not seeing any examples of this. We're not seeing at any point Microsoft gives a care about the product and that they're trying to make it work. So it's a bit weird that all of a sudden they come in and make this comment. About 3 months later, AMD are just like, no, nobody's ever spoken with us about that. Like, because the issue was around for 3 or 4 months. It was like this 10-minute start time when the console would boot it in about 20 seconds. So that's pretty norm. But I mean, Microsoft, when they finally made the game go multi-core, and they needed to, because the primary core was responsible for the game's minimum frame rate, and that was the core that was doing decryption, right, of the massively large texture file. And so it was totally overburdened in a way that the console didn't have to do that math. The console didn't need encrypted textures. Nobody needs bank level encryption, AES 256 level encrypted textures in a game. Anyway, they found a way to bog down PCs, and that's been Microsoft's modus operandi for years now. And they've gone to market asking all partners to come up with overlays, come up with stuff. All your games are going to be run in borderless window mode, so you don't get the performance of full screen mode. And everything's got to have an overlay that can drag down your performance and have CPU calls constantly, so that your game can't get 100% system performance available to it. And Microsoft love that. And so when these game companies do these game breaks where, like that happened with Forza, everyone was complaining the frame rate was slow. Yeah, sure, because it was only leaning on one CPU core and it was overbogged with something that it didn't need to do. And there was no headroom left for generating a minimum frame rate fast enough for people's video cards, as it should. They put out a patch that finally let the game go multi-core, but at the same time that patch came out was the first time we had it modified for PC, and they pulled in all the draw distances, and they basically made the game run really subpar or look equal to the best the console could do. And that was the new PC Ultra quality, right? And they never restored that. Their argument was they needed to pull the game down in order to satisfy all the users that were complaining. And that's my current fear for what's happening with this game at the moment. I'm just going to run a different way around town and see if I can get any more jank. So there's a very real fear here, and by the way, Warner's closing down tickets, trying to get a genuine issue redressed. It just looks like they want to have 400 symptoms all described differently and then give themselves permission to come in and just make this game go end of life right before they sell the new game, right? So they've now got a timetable for that. They know how far away that new game's going to be. So they're working towards that. And it looks like they're playing a careful little game of chess. And what they did is they put out a hotfix at the end of last month, and it fixed one quest thing in the game that was like nothing. When you look at the open tickets and how long they've been available for, basically it was used as an excuse to put this hotfix on everyone. And the hotfix was apparently for the top of the line 4 series NVIDIA cards with like 24 gig of RAM to free up a little bit of their VRAM at the top end, so that if they want to do frame generation, it'll all just work. And obviously it's affecting everyone. I mean, my video card uses 3 gig less VRAM constantly while the game's playing, and now it has all sorts of issues, constantly trying to stream in and out that data. So look, the game does work, the game does work well, it can be made to look good. But yeah, with 3 different installs, I just found, wrong button. 3 different levels of performance, and like not even needing to go on the net, like just clean installs from the same thumb drive. And Microsoft, just the way the platform works is completely different from boot to boot. And well, not necessarily, but it's taken me a few days to get the game to perform this way, and that's required all the boot into safe mode, display driver uninstalls to get Windows default drivers off, just to get basic video drivers working. It's required every little trick under the sun just to get on top of it. Now, there is microstutter all through this version. I can see that right now. But that's for me to address. It's not as bad as it was a day ago. No difference in the build. What I found with this version of Hogwarts that's fixed it completely versus other builds was that because my Windows glitched between reboots, I was actually moving my page file to another drive, and then I was just going to rerun the game, and then it blue screened. And I had to do another Windows install, that's fine. But in doing so, I actually moved the Hogwarts files off C drive without using the Steam command to move them. And so when it found those files again, it was having them reintroduced in Steam, it rebuilt up a couple of gig of them. And then when it's come in, and I'll give the example, where my head is right now, there's a bright window. And that reflection on the ground hasn't been right on my machine for a while. In the last month, when I've been trying to troubleshoot other people's solutions, I did one that a lot of people are saying, which is, delete this folder, right, or rename it, blah, 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 old. And it just gets rid of all your shaders. And sure, it doubles your frame rate, but it takes away all your high precision your quality mode, ray tracing reflections and everything. And then over a couple of hours in game, it rebuilds them up. And so I progressively proceeded to watch days where bit by bit that reflection would come in, but with no water pass on it. So it was just a bright yellow reflection. And then a little bit after that, finally we got the yellow reflection with the water pass on it. But it was cutting in and cutting out at the wrong spot on the ground, and it still just didn't align correctly as the way it should have. And so, yeah, just finding... I guess what I'm trying to say is that I think Hogwarts wants to build a set of shaders based on your resolution and based on your settings, whether you're using FSR or DLSS or whatever. And so I don't use FSR mode, and I'm not using any DLSS, or I'm not using any resolution scaling. I'm just playing it at a raw high resolution frame rate. In this case it's 4K. It's got everything set to ultra, and what I need to do is just to build the shaders up at that level. Once they're done, the game is fine. And as I experienced 2 days ago, I had a version of the game with constant microstutter, and just by leaving the computer to run overnight with my character in a field, down in lower Hogsfield, I think it is, lower Hogsfield. Anyway, when I woke up the next day, having nothing on the machine change, the microstutter was gone completely in that area. Then I came over to Hogsmeade here, and it was back again, and certain areas that were causing shader generation hits to happen were causing microstutter. So it definitely feels like a lot of the shaders are generated in the background. By in the background, I mean by the computer when you're playing the game, but just with whatever reserves of GPU and CPU power are left to crunch through some of the shaders that might be needed for a given area. And so if you rename your shader folder, whoa, expect days, if not weeks, of your game not running right. Okay, if you constantly change your settings and turn FSR on and off, expect your shaders to be a mismatch design, some built for one setup and some built for another. And then your in-game setting, your in-game render to the screen can be calling on libraries of data that might not match your current resolution settings or current setup. And I think that leads to a lot of issues in game. So I really encourage people, you run with one bunch of settings and you've got to let them run, right? You let them run for a few days, especially if you go, if it's a new install or you're mucking around deleting your shaders on your computer. Please don't. But that being said, give it a couple of days and it's good. Now, with regards to the microstutter, I do believe Windows is causing some of it. And I do believe the game has created a situation now that it's not using all of our VRAM, where it was leaning on the streaming systems extra heavy for the first time ever. And that, for me, was leading to lots of little microstutter moments, just wherever there was lots of data loading. But the more insidious one, which I found with a clean install of Windows on the weekend, was getting microstutter just panning my camera around, just constantly non-stop in the game. And I feel that went away after the game ran for a while. So it's at that point you would typically go, oh, that's de novo or something. Like, there's reason for that to be called out for being copy protection. Just the way it works. It doesn't work after a while. It's been running, and it's just like there's something attached to all those textures that's getting processed, or don't know. But look, this game versus the 2 installs of Windows prior to this current build, nothing else changing, other than essentially, I guess you could say, me rebuilding the files for Hogwarts, because I just copied the raw folder into my C drive install, and and here it is working really, really good. So I don't know if there'd been some jank in the processed files that were sitting in my install, but if that was the case, that would have worked before I did my Windows clean install. I would have gotten similar performance or the same. And there was none of that. It really was just, there's something going on in Windows updates. I watched the amount of threads or handles active on my processor from a very clean and neat cut down version of Windows, and then just running the big update that you need to get, and my Windows is totally bogged down now. It's obvious that Microsoft's got a couple of years of overbearing PC applets to just get in the way of PC gaming that is part of those Win 10 patches. I certainly won't run Win 11. Anyone that's running versions of... The people that do the projects for stripped down versions of Windows for maximum gaming performance, where they say that the older your version of Windows, the less latency on your controller, the blah blah blah, everything's just better, and that they take the attitude every newer version of Windows just gets harder and harder and harder to make run optimal. And with regards to the new Windows 11 24 quarter to or half 2 build. They're like, yeah, the worst yet, and this one is really hard to strip back. So, like, yeah, the rule of thumb is the older version of Windows you can run, the better. I mean, I have the luxury, I don't do anything else with this gaming box other than DirectX gaming. So, do I need it to run an Office suite and stuff? No, I don't. I have the luxury of being able to turn off tons of stuff that the average person can't on their productivity PC. And so I do encourage other gamers that may wish to consider doing that you can build a good gaming PC build. You can strip out a lot of the Microsoft jank that, yep, I couldn't get this to load smoothly, now it's loading super smooth. And it's just the difference of the Windows patches. And this is now running all the Windows patches, but the Microsoft on this particular install didn't get a chance to make errors and break stuff and accidentally install things 4 times in a row. And, you know, it required me having the due diligence of watching the first 2 installs of Windows and watching the sequence of events that Microsoft wanted to break things, and then knowing where to interrupt it doing that and when to boot over to safe mode and strip stuff out and then put other things in and then change things up so it can't do it again. And, you know, I feel like I'm falling back on 30 years worth of tech tinkering in order to be able to do just everyday stuff. There is a reason why I've gone so long between Windows installs. And it is I mean, I gave up on Windows as a platform years ago. I've moved all my gaming over to console gaming. It just comes down to the time I have towards playing, I guess, a game. If I've got 30 minutes a week, I don't want to spend 25 minutes of that time troubleshooting my game not starting up the same as it did last weekend on Saturday morning. You know, like, I don't have that time. I want to be able to enjoy my gaming. And even if my console has half the technical capability of my PC, the fact that I get more game time on it and no stress, it just makes it a better gaming platform, right? Games aren't necessarily about graphics or frame rate. Graphics, I would argue, yes, if it's a race game or something. I don't play my race games on Nintendo platforms. But, yeah, Mario Kart, everyone plays, I guess. But, yeah, the PC's looking like a pretty hard platform to really want to enjoy. I mean, really, you do it for the mods. The truth is, you can, you know, put a mod on this game and turn it into VR mode or something. You can't really do that on the console. So, is it worth sticking around with? You know, it is. It is. Okay, so what I was just doing there, I like to check my camera as I run up the stairs there. This is the smoothest and best working version of the game I've had for a while. I do need to look at some of these microstutters. I can run through this room a lot better. Certainly, the fact that I'm not hearing my video card fans fire up at all, I find a bit worrying. I think I've got all the profiles set to it just a little bit too easy. I like my gaming to be quiet, but I also, when I want to see raw performance, I don't mind my fans spitting up a bit. Anyway, I don't want this video to be all over the place. It is just I guess a mild update on the state of the games industry, if you will. Hogwarts at this present time, I would say, has issues. It's not necessarily your machine. Even if your machine ran it fine for a year and currently isn't, that's not your fault, right? There's been 2 updates at the end of last month. One was from Warner, one was from Microsoft regarding Windows 10 builds. So maybe we need to get on top of that when we put our complaints in, that we're on Win 10 or Win 11. Might just be that Win 10 was the one that got the issues. Win 11 is technically a platform that Microsoft, to force us onto it, are trying to make out like it's getting serviced and maintained properly. Well, it's a microstutter here I'm not a fan of. Yeah, so I mean, the CPU scheduler gets updated on Win 11, doesn't on Win 10. If you're running a modern CPU on Win 10, you're either going to have a lot of issues, or you're going to have nowhere near the performance that you're paying for. And that, for me, is consistently what the PC platform is that the operating system optimises itself in such a way. And I say optimise with air quotes around it, optimises itself so that you get, I use the term gimping, getting in mediocre performance. GIMP. Getting in mediocre performance. And that's what Microsoft does. For all the money that you spend on buying expensive hardware, companies out there decide to GIMP your hardware so that they get it in mediocre performance, and they make you then want to go out and buy new equipment. Fantastic for them, helps their bottom line, but you know, I don't like having products I've already bought being made to run at lesser quality. I constantly, you know, have to be ever vigilant just to make stuff work. That seems a bit unfair. This is my hobby. I should be able to enjoy it, right? This should be for my downtime. I've paid the money. I you know, if I work and buy a computer and I work and buy a game, this notion that these companies can down the track just click a button on their end in order to deprecate said software. In the case of Hogwarts, put an ad in for Quidditch, make it so the game runs like crap on just about everybody's machines that were, acceptably running it prior to, without, people with overkill hardware probably don't see any issues, but anyone on a system that was a little bit borderline and was getting by now might be having all sorts of jank they've never seen before. So essentially, right as the new game comes out for Warner, they've taken their fish in a barrel market of people that are absolutely qualified Hogwarts lovers and then turfing them all out of the pub at 2 a.m. while they've conveniently opened a hot dog stand 2 doors down the road. Yes, they're going to get a lot of business on Quidditch if they've just forced a lot of people out on the street right at the time when the hot dog stand opens, right? Like, this is just standard business practice, that's fine. But a little bit nasty. I do think Warner have taken the piss a little bit, more so closing down tickets, trying to get this game sorted. And truly my fear is just that we're about to get another patch that will make it so that PC Ultra graphics will never look good ever again. But, that's been my experience with every patch of this game that's come out so far. It's just pulled down quality level down, even if you had the ability to run everything at max. Because some kid out there screaming up and down that all their other games from last year that weren't open world RPGs, that they could run all them in Ultra on their mid-range laptop or whatever. But they can't run this one at Ultra. And so the developers usually, just to avoid the noise of being called out for being bad developers, will just go, okay, we'll just pull down the settings. Just make it work, right? Make the noise go away. But people like myself notice when the draw distance of active lights in the world kind of comes down to lesser zones, or it just, you see it little bit by little bit get pulled down, and it gets a bit sad. So my only concern, the only reason I put this video up, is just look, be aware at the moment. There is reasons why the game is running less than acceptably. We probably do need to take our tickets to Warner to say, look, I'm noticing my VRAM is going crazy, up and down, whenever that's happening. I'm getting microstutter in the game. If that's you. A lot of people having dropped cutscenes and stuff. It's all related. It is all connected. But at the moment, Warner are going to get a lot of complaints, and it's very hard for a tech support department to get on top of it when everyone describes what they're seeing, i.e. the symptoms, and very few people understanding the cause. And if you get a lot of noise coming into a support department in a very small amount of time, not all your techs are tier 3 level techs or tier 2 level techs, and it's really easy for these things don't get tallied correctly, and nobody can see the common theme or the underlying cause that, change one thing and fix 18 issues. It's like, yes, just revert the hotfix, wouldn't that be good? My personal opinion is the hotfix doesn't really add anything, or didn't really do anything that anybody needs. It looks like it was just coming out just to put an ad in our games, magically break our games at a time when the new games come out, and increase sales of new product. So the company won't be getting my money probably ever again if they don't revert the changes that they've just made this game end of life. They won't acknowledge people trying to get that fixed. If the next patch that comes out just heavy-handed pulls down all the ultra quality settings, properly right before Hogwarts 2 comes out, which will be Unreal Engine 5 and should look completely different and shouldn't have any of the performance or overhead issues that this game had, but likely won't have the same upper frame rates that this game had. So at this point in time, they would have working builds. They would know that a lot of people would be in a position where they're going to say, oh, look, I had more frame rate on Hogwarts 1 than Hogwarts 2, and if they don't put out patches like this one, then that will be the case when they launch the game, and people being able to create benchmarks where they go, look, here's me running through the castle at 80 frames in Hogwarts 1, here's me running through the castle at 45 frames in Hogwarts 2. And then people not understanding the difference in nanite, that the shadows, falling into the grout between the bricks, and all the little visual differences that are quite stunning to take in when you've got temporal resolution, that is frame rate, showing you the differences from one frame to another as light rolls across the screen. Right? Ray tracing doesn't look very impressive in static shots. Quite often you can't tell the difference between that and the other frame, but when you see it in motion, the way the screen gives you a sense of depth because of the enhanced contrast actively, accurately mapping the correct depth of all objects or the correct darkness value, it does make a difference. Anyway, as anyone can see, the game is just stunning. It's pretty. This video probably doesn't need to continue. I'm glad I didn't blue screen today. Look, I will continue making these. I've had 3 or 4 videos that I've just deleted. I'm probably working with a few people on the Steam forums that keep calling me out. Like I'm a tech wannabe. I've watched a lot of YouTube videos or something. I've heard familiar concepts, and now I'm trying to say things I've heard without the understanding of it or something. I don't know. And they say that my PC's not quick enough to run the game, which is interesting because I did benchmarks in the last couple of days against 6700s and all these processors that they're telling me that are needed as the minimal, and my machine just smokes them, like, absolutely. It's just like, yeah, I don't really have the bottlenecks. People trying to quote me at times when I've gone out of my way to create bottlenecks so that I can try to find out what's going wrong. They're kind of missing the context of, yes, I can make my game work, but here's an example of me showing where the game can be improved. And as I say, moving my page file off my C drive, moving the game off my C drive, I had frame rate improvements. And then I progressively went through a series of tests where I put the game on a hard drive, and it was just so much better than any of the solid-state drives on my machine. I gave reasons for that in said videos. And then I went to an external solid-state drive, and it was better again. And of course, this information either needs further testing from other people, or just be nice to see situations where it maybe is or isn't a thing. I do personally believe that a lot of laptop users running this game would benefit by putting the game on an external drive, even if their internal drive is apparently quite good. But that's neither here nor there, and it's not really a fix at the 36-minute mark of this video I'm trying to offer. It's just an awareness that at the moment, with what's going on with Windows, there's a lot of strange things going on in the background that are burdening people's machines down. And there's no consistency. And us PC technicians, intermittent issues are the worst to troubleshoot. When you can't change one setting and then see if it changes the outcome, and you can't reliably see that, it's like, oh, what's really causing the issue? But at this stage, like, yeah, just regenerating some of the Hogwarts files seems to have made the game work better, right? And sadly, I didn't have a way of just copying my raw files in because of the Windows glitch. I couldn't resume with the same working build of files that I've been using. So that error won't happen again. I've made a permanent backup, kept separate now. Anyway, it's all fun and games. Okay, so the only reason I've done this video, just to, I guess, get back in the habit of trying to put them up. I must admit, I've lost a lot of that little heart fire that makes me want to do these. It's kind of dropped off now that I seem to actively have people following me from video to video just to try to find misinformation and quote me for it, and then thumbs down me and dislike me. It's like, nah, man, look, I'm just a hobbyist, just like anyone else. I have put a lot of time investigating Hogwarts in the last week. I do think most of its woes might be from the hotfix, but I also think that Windows might be contributing. That's kind of valid, but until anybody really knows what's going on and how to fix it, these are just fun videos. Anyway, why you've invested 30 minutes listening to me? I'm sorry I didn't go somewhere on this one. Look, my next video might cover something. This one was more just a proof of concept, I guess. I'm just trying to get some footage up again and just establish that I'd gone through things. As I said, I had some photos ready on the desktop where I wanted to show just changing Windows power plans, going in and making a customized plan and changing minimum processor state up from 5% to 100%. Massively fixed one of the installs on the weekend that I did. Made things a lot quicker. So look, fighting with Windows, maybe the next video I should do is how to configure Windows to make it so that your resources are available for gaming. Anyway, maybe VR. Do how to make Hogwarts go VR. I'd like to do one on how to make Hogwarts run on the portable handhelds using an external enclosure and putting a good graphics card in, because those portable handhelds actually have enough CPU power to not hold back a really good video card. It's super high resolution gaming, and they might make a really good dock it to your TV type, dock it to an enclosed video card beside your TV when you get home, play your game in 4K type graphics type thing. There's all sorts of projects we could be doing. I do feel that just troubleshooting Windows isn't where my heart really wants to be at. And there's only so many Hogwarts videos and frame rates I care to do. But it is all about finding, for people finding value with the chosen path of entertainment, and that's probably more what I'd like to talk about. Hence probably me leaning on the PlayStation console in the middle of this. Half the cost of my PC and none of the stresses, a lot more fun. Oh yeah, the console platform is definitely the place to be playing, unless you need to mod, which I guess is the reason why we should be talking about VR and whatnot on this game. Anyway, please don't delete your shaders. I hope your game is working for you. If you are getting microstutter on traversal only since recently, please do create a ticket with Warner and let them know, because it doesn't look like anybody's complaining about it. The few that are might be having their tickets closed down really prematurely. Kind of looks like Warner just don't want to know about it. So, Warner evil bastards that have made a great game go into life right as they're selling a new one. Yep, that's pretty much what it looks like. But the current issues with the game might be more than just what Warner have created. So let's be ever vigilant. Let's see what we can come up with, and let's see if our solutions can roll out across other products. And I should probably say, having tested a range of games, none of them had the issues that Hogwarts has. So look, you kind of want to say it's a change that Hogwarts made, but it really is the way it uses the sub-streaming systems on the machine. It really looked like the way the page file was operating, and that Windows has configuration settings based on your power plan, be it low or high, that might change up the way it uses some of those settings. So more information needed. I'll come back, but I've got something worthwhile to say. Well wishes with.